Welcome to section 8.4. In this section we'll be discussing samples and population. So you should make sure you've got your note packet in front of you. You should be at the very beginning of section 8.4 notes. So we're going to read this together. A population is an entire group of people or objects. A sample is a part of the population. So in your notes you see that there's a picture of a school and then there's a picture of a classroom. And it says that a class is part of an entire school. All of the students in a school are a population. All of the students in a class are a sample. So a class, the students in the class would be a sample of all the students in the school. Alright, we've got the key idea here. Read it together. What makes up a reasonable sample? A reasonable sample is selected at random, representative of the population. Okay, so that means it was chosen from the population. Is large enough to provide accurate data. The results of a reasonable sample are proportional to the results of the population. Okay, so notice the word proportional. That means that you can solve a lot of these problems by setting up a proportion where you do the part over the whole. And then if you turn the page, alright, it says, so, reasonable samples can be used to make predictions about the population. Alright, so let's look at some examples of what we can do with this. I think you're going to like this section. Alright, so 8.4 practice, number 1, says identify the population and the sample. So we've got two things here. We've got members of a soccer team and we have all sports players. One of these is a population and one of these is a sample. Okay? Well, because members of a soccer team are part of all sport players, that means that the members of the soccer team are your sample and all sports players is your population. Okay, so again, the sample is just a part of your population. Number 2, I've got 8 crayons and I've got a box of crayons. Okay, so one of those came from the other. The 8 crayons came from the box of crayons. So that means the 8 crayons would be your sample. The box of crayons is your population. So it's going back to a part and a whole. That really plays into this. Okay, and then in the next couple of questions we have to decide which sample is better for making a prediction, and they ask us to explain. Okay, so in number 3, predict the average age of students in your school. Sample A, a random sample of 50 students in your school. Sample B, a random sample of 50 students in your class. Okay, so let's go back and look at the guidelines that we were given for a reasonable sample. So the key idea right here. And think about if these apply. So a reasonable sample is selected at random. Okay, were these selected at random? Yes, it said random sample, so that's good. A random sample is representative of the population. Okay, so in sample A, a random sample of 50 students in your school. Sample B, a random sample of 50 students in your class. Okay, which one is more representative of our population? Or what is our population? So they want us to predict the average rate of students in your school. Oh, I'm sorry. They want us to predict the average rate of students in your school. So the school itself, all the students in the school are the population. Which one, sample A or sample B, which one is more representative of our population? Well, sample A is a random sample of 50 students in the school. Okay, so this one is more representative. And then finally, the last part from the key ideas, a reasonable sample is large enough to provide accurate data. Okay, so we have a sample of 50 students. Okay, 50 students is a good number. So that's definitely large enough. But because the sample of students from the school rather than the sample of students for the class. If you choose students from the entire school, that's a better representation of your population. So we're going to go with sample A, and they ask us to explain. We're going to say because a sample taken from the entire school is more representative of the population. Okay. Number 4 is a similar question. Predict the number of, so again we're asked which sample is better for making a prediction, and explain. In number 4, it says predict the number of male dogs in the pet shop. Sample A, a random sample of 3 dogs in the pet shop. Sample B, a random sample of 15 dogs in the pet shop. Alright, so which one of those is the better sample? They were both selected from the same place, the pet shop. One of them chose 3, one chose 15. Remember, if you recall, the last guideline that we go by when determining if our sample is reasonable is that the sample has to be large enough to provide accurate data. So we want to go with a sample of 15 dogs. Okay, because if you just take 3 dogs from the pet shop, the first 3 might turn out to be female, but by the time you do 15 of them, you're much more likely to have a better representation of the population. So we're going to say sample B, because the sample is large enough to provide accurate data. And if you recall, the very last statement that we were given in the notes is that a reasonable sample is proportional to your population. So you can use a reasonable sample to make predictions about your population. So that's what we're going to be doing in number 5. A survey asked 56 randomly chosen students if they play basketball. 7 said yes. There are 24 students who play basketball in your grade. Predict the number of students in your grade. So we're thinking about this. You've got a part over a whole. And we're going to set it up as a proportion as part over a whole. Okay? So let's read it again. Read it as many times as you need to fully understand what you're being asked. A survey asked 56 randomly chosen students. Okay? So that number, is that a sample or is that a population? Well, we selected these students and then asked if they played basketball. 7 said yes. So we can do a fraction of 7 out of 56. 7's the part, 56 is the whole. Then it says there are 24 students who play basketball in your grade. Predict the number of students in your grade. So if 24 play basketball, they would be part of the entire grade because not everybody in your grade plays basketball. So our part now is going to be 24, and we're going to use n to figure out the number of students in our grade. So n equals the number of students in our grade. Okay, so I've got a proportion, and hopefully you remember how to solve this. You can cross multiply. 7 times n is 7n equals 56 times 24, and I left my calculator, so I gotta go get that. Okay, so we want to multiply 56 times 24. That gives me 1,344. Okay, and now we want to divide both sides by 7 to get n by itself. So we'll have 1n equals 1344 divided by 7 is 192. So we're going to say 192 students. And that's our answer. Okay? So you have what you need to be able to do the practice A sheet on the next page, and I'll hold that still. I will also scan this and post it as Schoology so you've got it as a resource in case you need it. Okay, but that is 8.4, and then there's going to be another video for 8.4 Part B.